Welcome one, welcome all. I'm sure when you hear Nickelodeon, one of two things comes to your mind. On the one hand, no matter what decade you grew up in, you've got a specific series or a series that's just stuck with you. The other?
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. I don't know what I was expecting.
Now, to hurt my credibility a little bit, I'll admit that I was more of a Cartoon Network kid than a Nickelodeon kid. When I grew up, I loved Teen Titans, Kids Next Door. Ben 10 was great, and Justice League Unlimited has some very funny moments. I never really watched a Nickelodeon channel at my own house, and when I did, it was more the live-action game shows of the late noughts and the early teens. Brain Surge with this 3x3 expanding to a 5x5 grid comes to mind. Splat-A-Lot being Wipeout, but Nickelodeon themed, and the 2012 reboot of Figure It Out have all taken residence in my brain. However, when I went to my cousin's house, all he had on was the Nicktoons Channel. And I loved some of the shows on there, like Fairly Odd Parents, Avatar The Last Airbender, and my personal favorite, Jimmy Neutron. Although Cartoon Network had a lot of shows that I tune in regularly to, Nick just seemed to be a little bit different. Because I scarcely watched it, I really seemed to have a little bit more emotion towards those shows. They were a bit feel-good to me. And I feel that Nickelodeon cartoons have always had that influence. As long as you weren't, in college in the 80s, I'm pretty sure you could outright say what your favorite Nicktoon is. Or at the very least, just say SpongeBob SquarePants and move on with your life. That aside, I've heard that some of the newer cartoons are actually worth checking out. I've told myself that I'd watch a couple episodes of The Loud House someday. I still haven't, but someday maybe. With an impressive backlog of cartoons, and the fact that Nickelodeon already dipped into the game show genre back in the early 90s, it's kind of a surprise that they never did a game show focused on all the properties they already own. Well, that is until earlier this year. In January, Nick revealed Tooned. Nick announced that the host would be an animated AI robot voiced by Rama Valerie, who is a relative unknown. The press release lists his most significant work as A-OK, a YouTube animation channel that hosts edgier parodies of childhood and contemporary topics. Yes, that's a video of Phineas and Ferb starting a cult. Yes, Rama voiced Phineas. Back to Tuned In, though, the robot was named Nikki, and was brought to life using 2D motion capture software combined with a trademarked robo-screen, a monitor with an articulating arm. Tuned In was executive produced by Rich Brown and Michael Dugan. Rich Brown was the senior human interest director of Jimmy Kimmel Live for 17 years, and I have zero interest in looking up what that means, since I'm not a senior. He also had Beat the Clock on his resume. Wait, which one? The 1979 version or the 2002 version? Okay, so in 2018, Universal Kids rebooted the show apparently. Opening Peacock for the first time in 8 months, I watched a few episodes, and right away I knew that it just wasn't for me. Instead of teams of couples, which has been the case for practically every version, they had 2 teams of kids, and I'll admit that I never really liked Beat the Clock, but overall, it was a pretty inoffensive show. But back to Rich Brown, he certainly had a bit more experience. He's worked on a few hits, like Meant to Win It, I Survived a Japanese Game Show, and especially both the original and 2017 reboots of Fear Factor. Although he had a few stumbles, like My Dad is Better Than Your Dad, I'm confident that he knows what he's doing. Meanwhile, Michael Dugan's been in the industry for a long time, but he mainly focuses on reality TV shows, rather than shows with an objective or a game. Although he technically has 4 to 5 producer credits for the 1997 Remote Control, the only game show he consistently produced was Trivial Takedown? What the heck is that?
20 minutes later.
Okay, so it's technically a game show in the loosest sense. They essentially got 2 celebrities messing around with rapid-fire identification. They'd show either celebrities or music videos, and the celebrities would have to identify who they were or why it's significant, so on and so on. I got similar vibes to a British panel show, where there is trivia, but you tune in more for the personality. And that appears to be the case. It looks like it was based off of the short-lived British show Blink. Still, I'll admit that I really liked what I saw. It seemed like he can make a quick, rapid-fire game show without really spending too much time detracting from the game or too much time focusing on the filler. Okay, now that we got the history out of the way, 5 or 6 minutes into the video, we can finally talk about the show itself. Nikki would name drop a couple of Nicktoons in the intro of the episode, and then show the 3 kids competing for a chance at $1,000. Nikki would have some pun-based intro for each contestant, such as, she loves to play freeze tag, but when it comes to winning, she wants to be it. After the introductions were done, we got our first look at the set, and I'll admit, it kind of looks drab. The most visually interesting part is how they added a few white PVC pipes and black elements to make the robot screen look more like a robot, and how they made the contestant podii look like an extension of that robot. Besides that, and a green floor with a couple of orange splats, the brick wall has a vibe that it was filmed in someone's basement. To be fair, the show does play that up, with Nick saying several times across the course of the series that it's filmed in his basement. And there are 3 LCD screens baked into the brick wall to show several Nicktoons, but the set isn't going to knock your socks off. To begin the show, Nikki would ask the contestants, if you're ready, do say this after me, like, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, or something along the lines of that. Then Nikki would explain the rules. Get a question right, you get the points. Get a question wrong, you lose points. And if you don't get a question right, you're in for a nasty surprise. Round 1 consisted of 10 questions, 3 sets of 3 questions, and then a quote-unquote impossible question. The first 9 questions were played for 10 points each, so getting it right adds 10 points to your score. Getting it wrong removes 10 points. Each set of questions would be based off of a Nicktoon character. For instance, I randomly picked an episode, and the 3 sets of questions were Fairly Odd Details, where kids would watch a clip and then ask a question about that clip. Spooky Lucy Shadow Show, where contestants would have to identify a Nicktoons character from their silhouette. And Quick! Answer Abuela, which was just a no-frills, multiple-choice question segment. Note that 2 of the 3 games were more identification games rather than pure trivia. By taking the focus away from hard and fast facts, the show becomes much more accessible to play at home. For instance, you probably have never seen an episode of Casa Grandes, which is where Abuela is based off of, but if you don't know what a Patrick Star looks like, you're a lost cause. If you weren't the person to correctly answer a question, you would either get slimed or sprayed in the front with some substance that typically had something to do with something from round 2. Nikki clearly didn't know what substance the production staff would spray on the kids each time, leading to Rama having to ad-lib something along the lines of, "Oh, I've gotta keep you guessing." Now, before the show, the contestants were given a list of cartoons they could ask questions about. On the screen right now is every cartoon that got at least 1 question asked across the 18-episode run. There isn't really a lot before the year 2000, but these shows, at the very least, encompass modern Nickelodeon well enough, with enough callbacks to the 90s. After the 3 batches of 3 questions, Nikki would read the scores and then present the impossible question. A question that he claims is so hard, even it has a hard time processing. Aside from a few anomalies from the first few episodes, most of the time the challenge was to count how much of something was in a picture. Like how many times there's a pepperoni on this pizza in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or how many times the dog surrounded Timmy in this still image. Nikki would ask each contestant right before the first commercial break, and then after coming back, Nikki would ask each contestant how they bid. The closest person, high or low, won 20 points. There was no rule stopping 2 people from bidding the same thing, and an exact guess didn't yield any more bonus except for a feeling of pride and accomplishment.
18.
18. The correct answer is 16, which means that Johnny, you're not just the closest, you're the first person ever to guess the impossible question exactly correct!
Yeah.
Oh, show me your best celebration. You just did the impossible. What does that make you feel, Johnny? Yeah. Oh, yeah, dance with it. Work it, Johnny, work it. Hey, I'm going to give you 20 points for landing on that impossible answer. And we're going to take a look at the scoreboard. Johnny's in the lead with 40, followed by Nick with 20, and Leahy with nothing, but there's still plenty.
Hi, game show host and post-production. You didn't get slimed if you got the impossible question wrong, and you also didn't get slimed due to the nature of the speed round. Anytime else in the main game, the only way to avoid getting slimed was to get every question right.
Round 2 consisted of 2 more sets of 3 questions, similar to that of above. The points were doubled, so 20 points if you were right, 20 points lost if you were wrong. Excluding the 25th and 26th of February episodes, one of the 2 segments was Cartoon Cosplay. The segment would begin with the Nicktoon, portrayed by Alexander L. Hoffman, who has some credits for on shorts on DreamWorks, but not really anything else, barging in, uninvited, pretending to be a character. The contestants would have to answer 3 questions, at least tangentially related to that character. For instance, in episode 4, he dressed up as Dora and asked what bilingual meant, who his cousin was, and the last word sung in the song On the Map. However, this was eventually changed to just the first question being themed. In the season finale, the Nicktoon dressed up as Mr. Krabs and then asked what type of animal Pearl Krabs was, then Timmy Turner's favorite musician, and then what animal April's dad from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles mutated into. Gameplay-wise, the cartoon cosplay was just another trivia section, but it introduced a new character to laugh at. The Nicktoon Nicktoon was played off as a complete loser, and acts kind of pathetic with his disguises. As shown by Nikki several times admitting the Nicktoon is phony and the sooner they answer questions, the sooner you'll get off stage. And honestly, it's kind of fun to laugh at a loser. Heck, I know that feeling myself as a man who's written over 5 pages worth of script for a Nickelodeon show that no more than 500,000 people ever watch.
I hope you win that money.
Now that everything has returned to normal and that awful goon has scurried away, let's finish.
After round 2 finished, the show moved on to the speed round called All the Answers. 12 potential answers were shown on the board. The contestants would have to answer 10 questions using those 12 answers, like, what is SpongeBob's favorite utensil? Each correct answer earned the contestant 25 points. Every wrong answer lost them 25. There was no slime in this round. It was just rapid-fire 10 questions of trivia, if you could call it that. What typically happened, though, was there was 1 pair of trap answers on the board, but besides that, you could pretty much logic the other few questions. For instance, in this episode, both Icky Vicky and Sticky Vicky were answers on the board. One referred to a song Timmy Turner sang with Chip Skylark. The other was someone Kid Danger battled at the Museum of Celebrity Garbage. If you're a 9-year-old kid, good freaking luck telling me the difference between the two, or even associating either of those choices with either of those franchises. Answers that were already chosen were not used again in future questions. So for instance, after Jimbo came up as Jimmy Neutron's nickname, there wouldn't be another question where the answer was Jimbo. Whoever had the most points across the entire game after the speed round won. In the case of a tie, Nikki would ask one final question with the answer being one of the 2 unused choices on the board. Whoever rung in first and answered correctly won.
Hi, Rory and Zachary both have 140 points, so they get to play one last sudden death question for all the answers. Reminder, only Rory and Zachary can answer this question. Are you ready?
Yeah!
I said, are you ready?
Yes!
All right. Born 10,000 years before the time of Korra, who was the very first Avatar? Rory?
1.
That is correct! Oh my gosh! An exciting speed round has come to an end, and Rory, you have won with 165 points, and you are moving on to the bonus round.
Now, as a fan of winning lines as Wonderwall, I really liked this speed round. I know it wasn't too difficult, but then again, easy for kids is much better than harder. However, this ultimately came down to who could ring in first after Nikki finished a question. For instance, in the season finale, Nick, as in the name of the kid, not in the name of the robot or the name of the channel, buzzed in for the first 7 questions in a row. You can't come back from that. If this really was a problem, maybe I would have put 15 answers total to allow for a couple more trap answers, but as it is, it's fine.
Post-production host here one more time. One thing I forgot to mention is that the game ran short. There were only 15 questions, excluding the impossible question, speed round, and bonus round. So in order to compensate for this, the show would typically run a couple of instant replays showing people slimed in slow-mo. Then towards the end of the show, as you're seeing right now, they do a replay of some of the best sliming moments. And then also sometimes after the end of the second act, after a winner's decided of the main game, they'd play a clip from a Nicktoon in order to pad that runtime a little bit. I realized I forgot about this in post-production because I was so focused on explaining the gameplay that the presentation of the game itself slipped my mind for some reason. Sorry about that.
After the second and final commercial break, to end the show, Nikki would challenge the contestant to one more game. Climb or slime. The set would grow dim and the screen that held all the answers would be rotated 90 degrees. To reveal a tower-like graphic. To win the $1,000, the contestant had to answer 5 questions correctly in 60 seconds. Each level had a different set of cartoons to choose from, and at the top of the climb was the player's choice, meaning the contestant could pick whatever Nickelodeon cartoon they wanted for the 5th and final question to answer. You had to pick a category that was adjacent to the previous category. So for instance, on this board, if you picked Go Diego Go as your first category and got that question right, you'd then have to pick between The Legend of Korra and The Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as your second question. Each question had 2 answers, 1 right and 1 wrong. If you picked the right one, you could move on to the next level. If you picked the wrong one, you had to stay on the level you were on. So for instance, let's say you picked Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as your next category and got that question wrong. You would then have a choice of playing a category adjacent to your circle on the same level. So either The Legend of Korra or The Loud House. Or you could do a slime reset, where you'd get slimed and then get another question about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Categories didn't expire, so for instance, you could pick The Loud House, get that question wrong, and then swap back to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. However, you only had 60 seconds, and Nikki would always read the entire question before moving on to the next question or telling you you're wrong. In the case you got a question wrong on the final level, the slime reset would automatically be activated, you'd get slimed, and then another question would be immediately asked 2 to 3 seconds later. If this sounds confusing, I'm pretty sure half the kids didn't really understand the rules, but they just heard the possible categories from Nikki on each level and just picked one. There was technically a money ladder. Getting the question right on the first level was $100, the second one was $150, and so on. But come on, it's a $1,000 prize in 2021 and you're not even going to give the losers of the episode a consolation prize. You can afford to give it away practically all the time. In fact, out of the 18 episodes, 16 had the contestant win it all. The only 2 losses were really because the kids were going slowly. It wasn't that uncommon to get all 5 questions right in a row with 20 or more seconds to spare. After winning the bonus round, Nikki would ask the kid what they would do with the money, and then asked if they wanted to shout out anyone or something of the like. And then he'd make some sort of computer-based pun of shutting down, and then tell the audience to come back next time for more slimed action. And that was Tuned In. I'll be completely honest, part of me thought something terrible was going to happen with the show, but it was a delight. This absolutely would have been one of my favorite shows when I was younger. The series ran 18 episodes from February 8th to March 6th, airing Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Friday, February 26th got an episode, and the season finale was supposed to air on March 5th, but was moved back a day to Nick at Night at 9 p.m. on Saturday. The season premiere got 486,000 viewers, with 140,000 the target demographic, thanks in part to a strong lead-in by Nickelodeon standards, The Loud House. The ratings fluctuated between a low of 242,000 on Wednesday with a weaker lead-in of Casa Grandes, to 246,000 on its only episode that was ever aired on a Friday. Also, as a footnote, for the episodes that happened between March 1st and March 4th, using the Screens Up app or the equivalent website, you could play along with the episodes. The top 4 players had their usernames displayed live on TV, and the top 100 players were shown in the app. Other than that, to cover all my bases, IMDb also says that there was a special featuring the teen band Gen Z. I found no record besides that IMDb page of some special happening, especially since there was supposed to be a guest star from a Canadian cartoon that I don't believe ever aired on Nickelodeon. I'm mainly just saying this just in case I'm wrong, and just so that I have some record of saying this. I'll be honest, I really don't want to count out a season 2, but part of me feels like this was filler made to have something live action on the network following COVID protocols. With that being said, I really liked what I saw. It was just a Nickelodeon cartoon quiz. It was clearly meant for someone younger than me, but I still enjoyed it. Do I think it holds a candle to other shows like Nick Arcade and Legends of the Hidden Temple? Not really, but I feel it holds well against other shows around this decade, like Brain Surge. Here's hoping to Nickelodeon to renew this fun show. But until then, I'm just a man of the hours, and it's certainly been fun, but I'm afraid my time has dwindled down to none. I'll see you next time, folks, where hopefully I don't get slimed again.